Well, I'm delighted to be here to share some of the views concerning various technologies, in particular 5G. 5G is a key access technology which is going to determine most of the applications that can be supported in the next 10 to 20 years, and hence it's something that is an imperative for us to introduce both in India around as well as the rest of the global countries. In terms of its introduction, you may note that we were about 10 years behind in terms of GSM, the second generation wireless in India. In the case of third and fourth generations, which are the previous ones, the fourth generation is the latest one. We are about 8 and 5 years. What is interesting is that we are not more than a year or two behind in terms of introducing 5G in India. The spectrum has already been defined, and the rest of the world is not introducing 5G at the pace that is expected. You also need to know that 5G is not yet completely defined. The standards for 5G will be defined in 2020 timeframe. So a lot of companies are introducing 5G as more like a prototype and for friendly users. It may be introduced to public, but I also feel that it's like a premature deployment as a way to more of a marketing by many of the operators globally than otherwise. So basically driven from the need, 5G will become more and more prevalent around 21-22 time frame, and we are right there with the rest of the global world in terms of introducing that technology. As far as its usage in intelligent applications, clearly 5G is the access for any of these smart cities, smart building, smart transportation, which also then includes an application which is the smart education. Education, the whole focus in terms of the interaction between the student and the faculty is changing. I believe that faculty is becoming more and more mentors rather than teachers, implying that there is a much more emphasis on self-learning for the students, and then using the teachers as mentors. So take an example of let's say artificial intelligence based learning packages. Those are able to convey to you your concepts. If you need any clarification, you can go to a mentor. But in order to evaluate how and what you had learned, it may ask you a question, let's say. When it asks you a question, if you are not able to answer it, it goes one deeper level and asks you a question at that level. So it continues that until you're able to answer a question which may be 3 or 4 deep level down in case you have missed those concepts. And once you answer them, then it takes you back again to the top. So a lot of the evaluations, teaching and all that is becoming more and more artificial intelligence based. But in order to make that, you need a connectivity like 5G. So 5G will be providing connectivity for that to happen. In terms of technology adoption for learning, in India, what I've seen, especially at MIT and a couple of other universities that I have been to, is pretty well at par with the way most of the other universities around the world impart knowledge. The kind of tools that are used, like Blackboard and all that, K-Point, and also whiteboard teaching, all these are pretty well prevalent here. I've seen examples where even for evaluating reports, a lot of the tools relating to plagiarizations, though are being used to detect that. Testing I already mentioned. So in terms of adoption of technology, I don't think Indian education system is any further, any back as compared to the global and the US standard, which I am more familiar with. In terms of students and faculty to become more knowledgeable about 5G, it's an issue of making sure that you take active steps in making contributions and looking at the envelope of knowledge rather than being reactive and looking only at the application part. So an example of that are the standards bodies. 5Gs. We have the 3GPP standards body, I believe in Geneva or wherever in Europe, where large number of companies, universities and all participate as a way to influence the actual things which are being proposed and done. So you take anything, let's say, of improving the spectral efficiency of 5G. A lot of people do research on that, come and make proposals, and they get adopted. They get IP, intellectual property, patents, and so on. So one of the things Indian education system and the research have to do is participate in those kind of a standards body, advance the envelope of knowledge, write papers in peer-reviewed journals, and there are quite a few of them, and make sure that India's education also gets visibility in those kind of forums. In terms of the growth for 5G, of what is going to happen in future, you can see that each generation of, let's say, third generation, fourth generation, have a series of releases, which about 5 or 6 releases before they migrate to the other one. Similarly, 5G is going to have major releases. One of the key areas continue to be how do you exploit the air interface to maximize its spectral efficiency. Most of the rest of the system, you can scale, you can add more electronics, you can do all these, but when it comes to air interface, it is a real bottleneck. So how do we handle the air interface as a way to improve spectral efficiency? That's one area. The other area where it will work a lot would be, it's not yet clear what all the health hazard of operation in the millimeter wave, which is a higher frequency of operation for 5G is. The literature so far is inconclusive. There is always a concern in terms of what will happen if you introduce 5G in the millimeter wave zone for, again, for humans, for vegetation, for birds, and so on. So fair amount of research is being done in that. I'm assuming that the next set of releases which will come in will handle issues like those in terms of how do we handle, if at all, the health issues, how do we handle multiple beams being sent to individual level, how do you do multicasting, multi-broadcasting, all these kinds of features will come. So I would assume that in the next maybe 8 to 10 years, like the previous versions, there will be a whole set of releases which we need to keep abreast with, and again, making sure that you get actively involved in standards body will be a key way to do that. As far as 5G's impact on our daily life is concerned, clearly it's a major enabler in terms of all the intelligent advanced applications that you will encounter as you move forward. That can include a smart home. When you go out of the home, you don't have to worry about the energy consumption, turning your AC off and on. All that will be done intelligently for you. So you will have a smart home. Driverless car is one example where the drudgery of driving, which creates a lot of tension on people, on you, if you have a car, will be taken off by a driverless car automatically driving, and you can just sit back, relax, and read your newspaper or whatever else you would like to do. In the back of the car, you can face it backward if you like, and the 5G connection to the driverless car will take care of that. When you go for shopping, you will not be carrying any kind of a cash or anything. There is an ID for you, and the 5G network connects that. So the quality of life will significantly improve. There are examples in Korea, for example, where in the old people's home, a person's location and identification is available to the system, and if you fall, for example, on the floor, the floor is an intelligent one which detects the fall and informs the doctor. Remote health is a very critical area where currently we are not able to send the doctors on to the villages, whereas here, without moving from the village, just having a sort of like a virtual hospital in the village, you can have access to a surgeon or a very highly qualified physician who can even carry out remote surgery using robotics and all through the 5G network. One of the key applications, especially in the Indian context, is agriculture. You may know that in India, or any other place, water is about 50-60% of the water consumption is in the farming, not in drinking or not in taking a shower. Hence, very high efficient utilization of water is extremely important, and timing for the putting of the crops, what the weather pattern is for the next month or two, so that you can plant the crop rightly, what the market prices are, so that the customer would know what price the farmer would know what price to charge. All these kind of capabilities are enabled by 5G, which has a major impact in terms of water conservation. So what, for example, would be done would be there could be sensors distributed all over the farm, and then each sensor reports on the water content in its neighborhood. All that information through the 5G network goes to a centralized database, which then actuates the water sprinklers at the right place at the right time, really keeping the moisture at the level at the way it needs to be, and create a very efficient water. So significant amount of water savings, especially for the farmers, can be done. So these are some of the fundamental ways in which 5G is really going to impact, and we have to be ready for doing that, especially including the education field, as these 5 or 6 basic technologies are becoming more and more advanced. We've got to build them into our education system, lower and lower down. What used to be a PhD thesis, I don't know, 5-10 years back, is now becoming part of your undergraduate studies. So that level of information will continue to be brought down. Similarly, 5G, which maybe is taught now in the fifth year or in graduate studies, will have to be taught in the junior or senior level. So 5G is not an enabler, but a critical part of us understanding how it will be used in our day-to-day life.